The national media says that the Utah Mammoth don't have a true villain yet. I disagree, and I'm going to make the case for a few guys coming up on this episode of SLC Puck. So cue the music, because here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to SLC Puck. I'm your host, Austin Facer. It is great to be with you guys. I'm realizing exactly what is kind of driving this new push for daily content, and it's a weird one, considering this is a hockey podcast covering the Utah Mammoth, and we cover other hockey happenings in the Beehive State. But I'm realizing now that this is like probably the most ideal possible weather situation to be inside, sitting at a computer, looking at content, creating content, and most importantly, rambling into a microphone. It is freaking insano hot here in Utah. It's actually cooler today than it has been the last few days. Right now it's only 92 degrees and cloudy outside. Oh my gosh, Saturday it's going to be 105 degrees in the Salt Lake Valley. That we will be in podcasting on that day, or we'll be at Mammoth Ice Center coaching youth hockey. That's another thing I do on Saturday. But hey, wherever and however this finds you, in your hot, smelly car, in your hot, smelly apartment, sitting in your hot, smelly underwear, we're so glad you tuned in to SLC Puck. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. All those little clicks of the mouse do a lot for us here, so we greatly appreciate it. Again, we are gearing up for what should be a very exciting Season 3 of covering NHL in Utah, and I can't wait. We've got a lot of things in the works. Things are going to come together really quickly, too, I think, in August. So, I'm enjoying summer while I can. This has been the summer from hell, and not just because the temperature would indicate that we have reached another circle of the Great Inferno. But one day I'll be able to get into that and tell you guys all about what's been going on this summer. It's pretty wild. So anyway, we're so glad you're here. There's been some fun topics at hand. I'm proud of how the show is shaping up. I appreciate you guys for your relentless support. And the content just keeps rolling in. I'll tell you this, the national media, and this is something that I think you guys are all attuned to as hardcore Mammoth fans. And I think that's who I speak to, like the hardcore Mammoth fans, the day oneers. If you've been here with me the whole time, you've been here since before day one. I think we all appreciate local coverage a lot. And it's because the national sort of look at the Mammoth, as fun as it is to see, the Delta Center, Ryan Smith, inevitably, the Mammoth on national TV, getting ESPN coverage, getting coverage on TNT, being talked about in major national publications like The Athletic, what we're going to read right here. I don't think they know the team on the same intimate level that we do. And I think that's why a lot of people prefer the local broadcast to the national broadcast, and why a lot of people prefer local coverage, like what you can find here on SLC Puck, preferable to a lot of the national outlets. And I think there's a really good example here in this article that I think does a disservice to Mammoth fans, what we've experienced already in our long and storied 2-year history. Some really standout moments, some characters, some incidents, some feelings that we've had, and they weren't captured here by The Athletic. And I mean no disrespect, but I'll read the headline and you guys will know what I mean. NHL offseason topic here. Again, prime, just keep the content mill rolling. That's what The Athletic is doing here. Which NHL player is the biggest on-ice villain in every team's franchise history? Oh, okay. Cover image has some provocative fellas. I think a lot of these guys landed on the list multiple times. Corey Perry Man, look at that. Yeah, he looks like Dracula in this image. Let me just zoom in so you guys can see what I mean. Whoa. Yeah, he looks like Snape. He looks like Professor Snape. And then, the other, they picked some great photos for this image. Sam Bennett right here. He kind of looks like sort of like a biker villain right there. And then Tom Wilson kind of gives like Bane vibes a little bit, or just your stereotypical villain type. So, very powerful imagery, and like there's great stuff, right? There's good articles, good little snippets here. There's stuff that stands out in my mind as well. Anaheim Ducks, their villain, Scott Stevens, he laid that devastating hit on Game 6 of the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals on my favorite player, Paul Kariya. I think that hit caused significant brain damage to Paul Kariya. I think I would be shocked if it didn't. That was pretty unbelievable. Brett Hull, villain of the Buffalo Sabres, he stole a Stanley Cup from them. Flames, it's Gretzky, McDavid, Battle of Alberta, all that good stuff. Of course, for the Avalanche, it's Darren McCarty of the Detroit Red Wings. Those were freaking unbelievable games. An unbelievable rivalry in the early 2000s between Colorado and Detroit. Of course, for Detroit's, it's Patrick Waugh. These are gimmies. Corey Perry, he is a longtime Duck. He finds himself as the Kings villain of note, although he has played for the Kings and now will be playing for them twice. Corey Perry's on there again. Sean Avery, Tom Wilson, villain for the Rangers. The Flyers, they hate Sidney Crosby. The Penguins, in return, hate Bobby Clark. A lot of these make sense, but, these are like terrific reminders. Sam Bennett, here he is twice, villain of the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs. But here, this is what I did all this reading, all this scrolling for. I was so eager to see who the Athletic had chosen as the Utah Mammoth's big rival, big villain, I guess, like an individual player that we detest the most. And I'm like, okay, I can think of a few options. I wonder who they will bestow this honor upon. I scroll past Toronto right here, Sam Bennett. I go to the Utah Mammoth section. No one. They wrote no one. And then the explanation from Harmon Dial. A lot of Mammoth fans hate the Golden Knights after their round one series. True, this past spring. But I don't think there was a specific universal villain. I'm going to disagree with this. Utah's story is too short, Harmon Dial continues, and doesn't have enough controversial moments for a real villain to have emerged yet. I don't know who the heck you are, Harmon Dial, who I'm going to look up right now while ranting. But I got to tell you, you don't have a bead on Utah. You don't know who we hate. We do have people we hate. We've come to this. Harmon, you're based in Vancouver. Listen, I'm not going to hold this completely against you, but I'm going to educate you. This is an opportunity for you to learn more about the Utah Mammoth, our fan base, and what our feelings are, because I'm going to give you some options, Mr. Harmon Dial. And this, by the way, this podcast is just for Harmon Dial now. If you're anybody but Harmon, tune out. Or just, keep this running in the background, so I can still get the numbers and all that. But again, I saw this. I was greatly offended because me and many other Utah Mammoth fans, we have some strong views on this, and we have some ideas. And I, as the unofficial spokesperson for the fans here in Utah, am set to give this honor to one player in particular. And I think a lot of you guys probably know who I'm going to go with. But let me just do my, preamble, rack up the retention numbers while we're at it. Again, as we're doing now, it's a slideshow, visual. I know you people have, low attention spans, so hopefully this can hold your attention for a little bit. To really get to the heart of this question, like who is Utah's first real villain? It occurred to me, like a lot of these villainous moments that we see can be embodied on the stat sheet. Like we can look at the tapes, we can look at the footage, and we may do that as well in this episode. I don't want to get dinged though for trademark infringement with the Chell, so maybe we'll pump the brakes on that. But looking at the numbers, we can see just some clues and some indicators as to where the villains can be found against the Utah Mammoth. Now, over the last 2 seasons, as both the Utah Hockey Club and the Utah Mammoth, the clubbing Mammoth have been embroiled in 49 Donnybrooks over the last 2 years, 5 of which have been against the Vegas Golden Knights, which was mentioned by Harmondile. So I'll give you some credit there. That's the most against any one other team. I do think, though, when you look at the fights, though, intensity and magnitude and storyline should also play a factor in sort of evaluating the villainacity. I'm going to invent a word right there. The villainosity of these moments and the players involved. One fight in particular stands out on hockeyfights.com as the highest rated hockey fight in Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth history. I'm talking about the bout last season in January between Alexei Toropchenko and Jack McBain, which of course was preceded by the knee-on-knee injury to Logan Cooley a few months before. But again, we're going to look at other stuff, other criterias. It's not just fights. It's not just penalty minutes. We're going to look at the grievances, like what exactly was done. Has there been repeated infractions? Was it consequential? And is it going to stand out in our memory? Are we going to remember this a year from now, even 2 years from now? Again, 49 fights already for Utah. Last year, 20 fights. The year before was the Utah Hockey Club, 29. So a little bit of a decrease in terms of sheer numbers, but I do think the fights that we did see last year were more consequential because there was more on the line. This was a playoff team. These moments mattered significantly. One of the fights was a direct retaliation in consequence of a knee-on-knee hit on Logan Cooley, as I mentioned. Fights. The other fight that we're going to talk about, I'm sure you Mammoth fans saw this coming. Lawson Crouse dropping the gloves against Tom Wilson against Washington at the Delta Center. I believe that might have been around March of last season. We'll check the numbers. I do have it in here somewhere, just remembering this off the top of my head. We all remember that, though. Lawson Crouse waits for Mr. Tom Wilson to get out of the penalty box for his time to expire for his hit on Jack McBain. And there was some other tomfoolery in that as well. Crouse skates towards the box. As he crosses center ice, the gloves are off, and he is ready to throw the second Tom Wilson steps out of the box. I think this ended up costing the Utah Mammoth that game. Lawson Crouse was given an instigator penalty for his misdeeds. He got the respect, though, of his teammates, I think. And Bill Armstrong mentioned this later in like an intimate setting that, he admired, Lawson Crouse standing up for his teammates like that. Nevertheless, Utah, I think, lost the game on that play. Instigator penalty puts Washington on the power play. They score, and that ended up being the difference in that one. Those were 2 points that were pretty important. Ultimately, not too consequential in Utah's playoff, breakthrough. But still, points, especially in that point of the season, are very, very critical. So there was the potential for this to be remembered as a potential catastrophic error, referring to Lawson Crouse's instigator penalty. But again, let's just look at the numbers for now. Who are we having the most fights against? I said we had the most fights against Vegas. I misspoke. We've also had 5 fights against the St. Louis Blues. And again, the storylines are there. Alexei Toropchenko comes to mind. I almost said Matthew Olivier, although he has fought against Utah as well. Pierre-Olivier Joseph, he took on Mavlam after an alleged knee-on-knee by Mavlam. I can't remember who that was on. Was it Toropchenko? That would be pretty interesting. But these two teams definitely have history with each other. St. Louis and Utah, divisional rivals. St. Louis knows that Utah highly covets Robert Thomas and wants to pry him away. I do think there has been some blatant disrespect from St. Louis to Utah. I think we remember, might have been early part of last season, where head coach Jim Montgomery of the Blues, who, by the way, former Utah Grizzly, said he was preparing for Utah, listed off a bunch of players. For whatever reason, perhaps disrespect, perhaps intentional, whatever, omitted Logan Cooley when he was rattling off his list of players on the Mammoth side that he was going to prepare against. Logan Cooley scores 4 goals in that game. So, hey, you missed that one, Jimbo. You did. Interestingly, the one player who has logged the most fights against Utah, I am going to rule him out as the villain, although this guy has dropped the gloves against the Mammoth Utah Hockey Club 3 times, which is the most by any one individual player in the National Hockey League. I don't remember any of these fights very well. Mark Kaslick is the guy. He had 2 fights with Robert Bortuzzo back in November of 2024. Utah was playing as the Utah Hockey Club. I believe that it was Kaslick must have been playing. Yeah, he's still a Boston Bruin, right? So both those matchups against the Bruins. Again, 3 fights though, and they're both, all 3 of his fights early part of the season. They are with, guys on Utah who can chuck him. Robert Bortuzzo, Liam O'Brien, but I don't remember these fights at all, and I don't remember any, I don't have any feelings when I see Mark Kaslick's face or his name. So I'm ruling him out, although he is the player with the most fights against Utah in NHL records right now. So I'm gonna say here, let's nominate some villains. Let's really get into us. Our leading candidate number 1, I'm gonna say is Alexei Toropchenko. Okay, this is something that Harmon Dial must have slipped his memory. He commits a knee-on-knee major against Logan Cooley back on November 29th. Knocks Cools out of action for about 6 weeks. You might remember Utah gets their moment to collect the debt, so to speak, on January 9th. Jack McBain, right off the opening draw, finds Toropchenko, finds his dance partner, lays into him, and the price is paid. So that to me stands out as a villainous moment, and I think as we've seen more history with St. Louis, I think we'll see a bunch more of those. And these are teams that, when they play, they matter. It seems to be an odd quirk in the schedule that St. Louis is Utah's final opponent of the regular season for 3 consecutive years now. Central Division foes, 4-point swings at the end of the season, and then really 4-point swings in every matchup, right? These games matter. These are very intense, and they don't seem to think much of Logan Cooley. And I don't think that's something that Logan Cooley appreciates very much, and something that his teammates are gonna stand up for him for. So that's gonna be my first candidate, is Alexei Toropchenko, and that was the one fight that was registered on Hockey Fights user rating as the highest rated Utah fight of last season. You know what? Tell you what I'll do. NHL be danged. Let me go find that and pull that up, because I think that's worth revisiting, especially in an episode like that. And maybe while we're at it, I'll go look at those Mark Kaslick fights. Again, they don't stand out in my immediate memory, but hey, maybe something will jog my memory upon second review. But here we go. Let's take a look here at what has been the best fight in the history, the long storied history of the Utah Mammoth here. Let's find it here. There we go. January 9th, 2026. The debt repaid. Jack McBain, Alexei Toropchenko. Date's been made. Appointment's been set. And let's check it out. Let's revisit that. Let me just, this deserves sound. Let me make sure we have the sound piped in. Look at this. This is an episode produced entirely on the fly here, everybody. How does he do it? Caffeine. It's a big part of it.
We'll go tonight for the St. Louis Blues.
The soothing sounds of Matt McConnell right here.
2nd of January against the
Here we go, setting the stage right here. Puck is yet to drop. Bennington's not in net. That's the one thing that's sad about this. There they are. Right off the drop, they know. Toropchenko, Boehner, center ice, Delta Center. It's on. Fans are going nuts. Boehner, here we go. Yo! 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 That's what you get. That's what you get. Yeah, you'd have a couple. Here's another. Yeah, take a seat.
Down to the ice, and this place is going crazy early.
Dang, you know what makes me sad? Seeing that video actually makes me sad because we had tickets to go to that game, and I did make it to that game, but I was 5 minutes late. And as I'm parking my car trying to get into the arena, Sammy texts me and she's like, you missed it. They fought right off the jump. And I'm like, God damn it. I was so annoyed. Resounding result for Utah. They collect their debt for the hit against Logan Cooley. Jack McBain wins this one by a fan vote of 98% by 39 votes in the fan vote to 1 vote for Alexei Toropchenko, which I'm going to call boo on. I think that's voter fraud right there. So that's candidate number 1, Toropchenko. What a moment. Let's look at our other criteria, however. Okay, let's continue down the list. We still have a lot of good candidates. We've mentioned some of them briefly, okay? The other point of consideration that I want to give you people when considering Utah's biggest villain, penalty minutes. Now, these might include fighting majors, misconducts, majors of other varieties, double minors, just dirty, dirty stuff, right? Let's just take a look at the leaderboard here. Again, we so appreciate the research team here at SLC Puck for getting this done. The number 1 most penalized player against the Utah Mammoth, Tommy Wilson, 30 penalty minutes against Utah. I believe in that one game last season, I think he broke 20. I think he might have had 20, either 19, 20, or 21 penalty minutes in that game alone. I so distinctly remember doing the episode immediately afterwards, was saying listen, Utah blew it. They let a guy who had more time in the penalty box than on the ice dominate the game. Found that very frustrating. It's villain origin story material is what that was. We also see fellow tough guy Matthew Olivier here on the leaderboard. He's gotten 20 minutes for misconducts against Utah, 2 misconducts. Alexei Toropchenko there at 3rd, 24, so 2 majors, 1 game misconduct. Patty Maroon, he's gotten 2 majors with 1 misconduct against Utah for a total of 22, putting him 4th on the list. And then our buddy Mark Kaslick, who has committed more fighting majors against the Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, than any other NHL player, has notched 18 penalty minutes against Utah, 3 majors, but has 0 misconduct. So if we're looking at this as a point of criteria, it's the guys that we've still talked about quite a bit, right? Tom Wilson, Alexei Toropchenko, and you can kind of waffle, right, on back and forth between Wilson and Toropchenko as to who gets more notoriety and who gets more vitriol hatred, just on sheer memory from the Utah Mammoth. If I'm going off of my own feelings, though, my own reaction, my gut, I think it's got to be Tom Wilson. I think without question, Tom Wilson is probably Utah's biggest villain right now. I saw somebody comment this on my last episode that I shared in a Facebook group. I brought up, it was a great episode, by the way. Check it the frick out. Great episode. I said 5 can't miss games at the Delta Center in Salt Lake, because Utah Winter Classic is not going to be at the Delta Center. It's going to be at Rice Eccles. But 5 Utah home games I wouldn't miss. I had the Washington Capitals on that list because primarily it'll be probably the last opportunity to see Alexander Ovechkin on the ice at the Delta Center. But you lump Tom Wilson into that sort of formula, to that sort of rationale as to why you should not miss the Washington game this year. Yeah, it's going to be an electric factory. I mean, let's not forget, he's fought Jack McBain. He and Jack McBain have some history. They fought back in 2024, start of some bad blood, right? I believe that may have been in response to Jack McBain hit on Alexander Ovechkin. That was knee on knee. That was Utah answering the bell for their actions on the ice. Wilson, gave his, flowers and some fists to Jack McBain, saying, hey, he did what he had to do. He followed the code. He answered the bell for hitting our dude. I respect him. Still, the next season, McBainer's injured. He's got the bubble on his helmet. He had some injuries towards the end of the year. Trying to get back in the swing of things. He goes into a corner hard against Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson goes high on the bump and gets Boehner right in the head with a sharp elbow. That's what kind of causes the whole fracas that night. And then, of course, Lawson Crouse meets him outside the penalty box to pay the price. So he's a provocateur when it comes to Utah action. And again, there's an argument that Utah has not been an innocent party in all of their interactions with the Washington Capitals and Tom Wilson. That's fine. We'll see if this continues to be like a blow for blow kind of story that evolves. And maybe it is. Maybe it could be. Maybe I think that now that I mention it, maybe I'll bump Washington even further up my list, knowing that this is Utah's biggest villain coming to town. And when he and Jack McBain are on the ice again together, could be explosive. And maybe even when Lawson Crouse is on the ice, that could be something too. Could be pretty interesting. Pretty dang interesting. So I think right now, if I were to send a message to Harmon Dias right now and say, listen, hope you're doing all right in Vancouver. I know maybe it was in retaliation for me doing an entire episode shitting on Vancouver, not necessarily the city, although there's a lot of material there. But on the Canucks, maybe this was sort of his revenge because he's based in Vancouver. So if that was it, I am sorry. Okay, I'm sure Vancouver's nice. I've heard it's like Seattle, but more Canadian. But hey. Let's make sure that you're giving the fans a fair crack at good coverage and acknowledging the hatred that we do have. When you have hatred, I think that's the one thing you really, really want. When you have like bad feelings in your heart for another person, perhaps justifiably, the one thing that we as human beings all pursue and seek the most is an acknowledgement of our hatred, of our hurt, and the negativity that we have for this person. And I think we were shortchanged on that. And I'm here to right that wrong. There are more candidates that we could have considered. I do appreciate that Harmon noted the bitter feelings that we all have for the Golden Knights right now, who I've said are our biggest rival now. I think that's a bigger rivalry than Colorado, although that could change, right? But when you look at like the series, like again, I remember this like pretty clearly. Like the guy who frickin' drove me the most bonkers, the guy who I detested, and not because he fought, but because he played well and inflicted a different kind of pain on us, was Brett Howden, who scored 4 goals in the series against Utah, 2 in Game 4. The shorty in Game 5 where he stripped the puck from JJ Paterka. It was a horrible play. No, he didn't strip the puck. So can't remember who it was who stripped the puck. It might have been. I can't remember. He was all over the ice though, Brett Howden. He definitely scored the OT winner. But you remember that play? Mishandled puck by Veggie, which leads to another mishandled puck by JJ Paterka, which leads to a Brett Howden double overtime winner. Fudge. Game 6, Brett Howden, who else, opens the scoring. Utah sees their season end that night. 4 goals, 4 pretty demoralizing goals against the Utah Mammoth in last year's playoff series. So Brett Howden would be another acceptable candidate, I think. But I do think in terms of visceral emotion, which is perhaps the primary driver in making this award. I think you do have to lead more towards Toropchenko and then ultimately settle on Tommy Wilson. But we do need to acknowledge the hatred we feel for Brett Howden. I do think there's another guy that we can talk about as well, Connor Bedard. We remember last year, gets the tying goal with an assist, stares down the heckler through the glass. He likes to stare people down through the glass at the Delta Center. And I don't know what we can do about it. I don't know what we could put on our side of the glass that would upset him and communicate the less than good feelings that we have for him. But again, Connor Bedard seems to like to mix it up with Utah fans. And one day we will get our revenge. We will find a way to tease and harangue him and let him know he's in the wrong town. But the other thing that sucked was Chicago just had our number last year, so wasn't much we could say. That was pretty freaking annoying. But we do need to acknowledge the fact that Bedard deserves to be in this conversation as well. So there's a lot of really good candidates. There's the Mark Stone angle as well. He's Vegas's leader. Howden, though, I think found the score sheet more often in those very consequential games. Keegan Kolzar, who was, Vegas's enforcer last year, he was always mixing it up with our guys, particularly in the playoffs. He now is going to suit up for the Detroit Red Wings. I think those games are always pretty dang interesting. So we'll see him on the ice when Utah plays Detroit at the Delta Center on January 13th. They play at the Pizza Place, Little Caesars Arena, earlier that week. So they'll get a lot of Kolzar that second week of January. But I got to tell you, we look at our list. We look at what we've just talked about. Toropchenko, emotional villain, very, very emotional. Tom Wilson, he's been a repeat offender, crimes against Utah. Maybe not necessarily crimes, but run-ins with Utah. Brett Howden, freaking annoying. Playoff kind of menace. Vegas as a whole, hate those guys now. That's our rival in terms of a team. And then I think just the other guy, Bedard, we can call him the. I mentioned Macklin Celebrini last episode, but I think he and Bedard, those are the superstar heels. And I would probably give the edge in ultimate superstar heel to Bedard just for sheer fact of the stare downs to the crowd. So that's my thought. I'm going to go with Tom Wilson as the ultimate choice there for Utah's villain, with Vegas rightly being acknowledged as our rival. So I would love to know what you guys think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Did I miss anything? Did I misremember anything? Does somebody else stand out in your mind? I don't know. You'll have to tell me. Put it in the comments or whatever. Who cares, right? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to SLC Puck. It's been a blast getting out of the sun and doing these with you guys this summer. So we'll have a lot more to talk about. We'll continue to rock and roll and get these episodes out for you guys. So again, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.